Confucius is considered one of the greatest philosophers of all time. He was a Chinese scholar who wanted to restore order, harmony, and good government to China after the collapse of the Zhou dynasty. He even created a school to educate people of all social classes. However, there is nothing in history to suggest Confucius also educated women. In fact, women are mentioned only a few times in all of Confucius's many writings. This raises the question, was Confucius sexist? Before we dive into that, let's start with who Confucius was. Confucius lived from 551 BCE to 479 BCE in China, which was towards the end of the Zhou dynasty. He thought the principles of Zhou religion were, quote, the ethical core of Chinese society. From these principles, Confucius founded an ethical system called Confucianism that was based on good relationships with family, ethics, and a social order for all humans to follow. These foundations turned into everyday behaviors and social norms for all people in China. The Analects are the collection of the beliefs of Confucianism, and it mostly consists of the accepted behaviors for human relationships. Confucius wanted people to think hard about their everyday actions, and he focused on creating models for family and public interactions in order to provide an outline for everyone to follow. This outline is based around the Golden Rule, which is to treat others the way you want to be treated. Linking back to the main beliefs, Confucian principles have two sides. The first side is the conforming side. This side has to do with respect for parents and keeping one's place in society. Essentially, it means women are stuck in one role, which is being a homemaker and taking orders from their husbands, fathers, brothers, and grandfathers. The other side is the reforming side. This side is focused on establishing character, ethics, and one's conscience. For women, this means women need to work on being supportive wives without complaint and being able to take care of the children with proper ethics and behaviors for the Chinese culture. The standard Confucian family model also pushes women off to the side. It focuses on the paternal side of the family, which means the wife has to leave her family and join her husband's. The husband is considered superior over the wife in the family through a natural hierarchy that has been the case since humans first civilized, and Confucianism merely continues this trend. Although Confucianism interpretations have reinforced male authority over women, the Confucian Analects have nothing that says anything specific about the subordination of women. The Confucian structure has made it so women always have to occupy a lower position than men, and most Confucians accept this because of yin and yang. The yin, women, could not be more powerful than the yang, men, because this could unbalance the universe and cause chaos. Sometimes, women were even separated from the men in her own house. Women had to stay on the inside of the house and, in some cases, were not even able to go in the outside rooms where the men stayed. A woman couldn't even divorce her husband unless they both agreed, but a man could divorce a woman without her consent. A woman could also be kicked out of her husband's family if she failed to have sons. There are also some things Confucius never mentioned, but Confucian interpreters have enforced. Some Confucian teachers have said that they admired the women who committed suicide after their husbands die, which may put the wrong idea in young women's heads. Confucian leaders also said that an illiterate woman is a good woman because she would be unable to oppose men. These interpretations have caused a lot of women to feel neglected by Confucius and the society he created. Confucius himself doesn't address women, which may show how little he thinks of them. One of the few times Confucius does address women is when they are compared with servants. Categorizing women with this lower social class implies that Confucius thinks all women are at the same level as lowly servants. Even so, not all women were suppressed. Women were able to be the head of the household if their husband died and her sons weren't of age yet, and a man was only able to divorce his wife if the wife had a family to return home to. Additionally, Confucian leaders also didn't recommend or advise feet binding. Young Chinese girls would wrap a cloth around their feet so tightly that it breaks the bones in order to make the foot more delicate. This shows that Confucius didn't want all women to be suppressed because he wanted to give women some small power. Although most women were treated badly under Confucius's guidance, women weren't treated that much better before Confucius. In pre-Confucian times, some villages in China had a matriarchal society, meaning women were in charge. However, most cultures were typical of other places around the world at this time, where the men hunted and the women stayed home and cooked. This cultural difference caused a lot of warring between different regions. It also means that women were still being suppressed all around the world. During Confucius's life, other places in Afro-Eurasia were more restricted than in China. Some highly respected women were veiled, and women's roles were more restricted than they were in one of the first civilizations, Mesopotamia. Women hardly had any interactions with men outside the family, were unable to vote or participate in government, and couldn't own land or hold jobs. Some women weren't even considered citizens in some cultures, which means they weren't able to participate in public matters outside of the family. Overall, gender roles were very strict, and women had few opportunities to change their circumstances. This shows that China wasn't the only country to have women be in lesser roles than men. After Confucianism became more common in Chinese culture, many changes occurred. There became more pressure for women not to remarry, women bound their feet more commonly, and women were more likely to be constantly pushed around by men and even older women. Women were encouraged to abort female children so she could raise a male. Women only had a little bit of power in the home, and they hardly ever had any power outside of it. According to Song Rousseau, a highly educated Confucian teacher, women should hide all emotions from men, make almost no noise, and conceal herself from all men who could be, quote, distracted or attracted to them. This shows that men viewed women as things that only existed to improve their quality of life without considering the fact that women were also human beings. Now, let's see how old Confucian policies established more than 2,000 years ago have changed with society. Nowadays, women are marrying later on in life, around age 24, which is considerably later than the common marrying age when Confucius was around, which was about 15 or 16. Almost half of all highly educated women are unmarried because they value work more than typical gender roles. 51.1% of all post-secondary students in China are women. Women are now 17% of all people in the government, which is a big increase from the 0% that it was when Confucius was alive. Even though women have come a long way, there are still many things that men dominate in China. There are more men than women in the labor force. Women also earn about 35% less than men for doing the exact same job. In rural areas, women earn 50% as much as men. The women's retirement age is 10 years before men, which means they have less time to earn as much money as they can. Some employers also don't hire women because they don't want to risk the possible maternity leave. China still has a long way to go in terms of gender equality in the workplace, and the wage gap is more prominent in China than it is in the United States. In the US, Europe, and other Western cultures, women have a lot more opportunities. They can become doctors, lawyers, and other highly educated jobs. They don't have to stay home and be homemakers while the men went off and made money for the family. However, some prejudice still exists. Sexism is still a huge problem in society, and it's even worse for women of color. Even though women still face a lot of discrimination, it's not as bad as it used to be all around the world. In conclusion, Confucius actually treated women better than other cultures at the time. In China, women did not experience as much abuse and discrimination as they did in some societies in Afro-Eurasia. However, compared to today's standards, Confucius was clearly discriminating against women. He denied them the same opportunities as men, and women are largely ignored by all of Confucius's teachings. Confucius was highly educated, but he never could have even entertained the thought that women could contribute more to society than simply taking care of the home. He was only following the social norm at the time. Therefore, to answer my original question, Confucius was, in fact, not sexist. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away. I hope you enjoyed learning more about Confucius and women.